Welcome to the Pregnancy Help Podcast. I'm Christine Grimmett, and I'm joined by Heartbeat International's International Program Specialist, Ellen Foell. She's our world traveler. She helps us stay connected and unified as a global pregnancy help network. And she has brought Dr. Laura Lewis from Pregnancy Care Canada to bring us up to speed on some of the happenings in the pro-life world in Canada, as well as some personal updates on a project that she has been working on and has recently published. And one of the other projects that Ellen works on here at Heartbeat is our e-newsletter called Heartbeat Around the World. And this is also another way that you can stay connected to the global movement. Whether you're an organization in the US or anywhere else in the world, we have a handful of other newsletters that contain helpful information, sometimes free resources, articles, links to the podcast, webinars, and other training opportunities. And if you're currently working or volunteering in the pregnancy help movement and are not receiving those emails, or you're interested in signing up for other newsletters, visit heartbeatservices.org, click on e-news subscriptions under the affiliates only tab, and I'll also add a direct link to that below in the show notes. So Ellen, I'll turn things over to you. Let's get started.
Thanks, Christine. Great to be with you. And Dr. Laura, great to be with you as always. Hello, Heartbeat family and friends. I love doing these podcasts, and I love, Christine, what you said that really my role is to advance the unity of the pregnancy help movement around the world, but that does not happen without connection and communication. And I love that those two together. So thank you for tweaking my memory in that. One of the people I've had the honor and the privilege and the fun of getting to know in the pregnancy help movement is Dr. Laura Lewis, who is our guest today. Laura is a family physician in Canada. She is a Jesus follower. She serves as the servant leader, executive director of the Pregnancy Care Canada, which was known as Canadian Association of Pregnancy Support Services. Mostly, though, I want to introduce her as my friend and also as a recent author. Congratulations on your book, More Than One Choice. We're going to talk about that, Laura. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you so much. And I do want to underscore the beautiful way that you are interconnecting the pregnancy help movement around the world. And it's been such a privilege to get to be part of that international council and to meet others and to hear about the trials and triumphs that are going on across the nations.
Amen.
And thank you for pulling us together.
It's my joy and my privilege. Thank you for saying that. So I have about 3 sheets of pages of 3 sheets of questions for you, and I'm going to try to limit it to probably 4 or 5 pages because lawyers like to expand the questions, not limit them. I want to start first of all with you, Laura, because you had an interesting introduction into the pregnancy help movement. I did not know, I don't think I did, that your original degree is in business. Is that right?
Yes, it is. I did a 4-year Bachelor of Commerce degree, and I always thought I wanted to go into business. And then at the end of my 4 years, I thought, I don't really have a lot of passion for business. I wasn't interested in the marketing jobs, but I was always interested in the health radio shows. And so I ended up volunteering for a short stint down in Haiti to see if I could use my business skills in the developing world. And it was upon return from that 8 weeks that I felt like I was to go into medicine. And so my focus shifted.
Mm-hmm.
That is a longer story.
It's a great story, available in some of it anyway in the book. But I would like to ask you, can you connect for us the journey from medical school to executive director of Pregnancy Care Canada, because it was not a straight line?
No. And I have had people ask me, so what was your career path and how did you plot this out? And honestly, if anyone really looked at it, it was zigzagging all around, and I did not plan this out. But I started my medical degree and I was not a follower of Christ. I never had that awareness or revelation. And so for the first 10 years of my practice, I was socialized really by the medical system. And in that time, I didn't think anything about abortion. So I referred many patients for abortions. I had no revelation about the value of life. And then at about the 10-year mark, I started to burn out. And at that time, I was invited to go on a mission trip with a colleague who's going to Guatemala. And it was in Guatemala, surrounded by all these Christian medical professionals and others. And I truly saw they will know us by our love. I saw the love and my hardened heart softened. And I began to question, maybe this is real. I had always believed in the supernatural, but I'd never found what I was looking for until I encountered the Lordship of Jesus Christ on the mountaintops in Guatemala. And I came back changed. And so that changed obviously my spiritual understanding. And then a couple of years after that, I had a revelation about the value of every life, and my heart was broken. And I realized we can talk about it, but it has to look like something. That help has to be something practical. We can't just say, consider your options, all the ways that people can help to counsel someone with an unexpected pregnancy. But I believe there needed to be that practical expression. And so with a small group, we helped to start a local pregnancy care center in our town. And we needed the help of the organization, Pregnancy Care Canada, at the time called something different, but without their help, I don't think we would have ever opened our doors. And so I really believed in the importance of this type of work. And then they asked me to join the board. Then the executive director was retiring, and one of the board members said, "Oh, Laura, maybe you'd like to do this." And I said, "No, I wouldn't like to do this." And I really didn't want to. And then I kept waking up at night with ideas, and I realized that I did want to do it. And so 8 years ago, I stepped into this position, and I have loved almost every part of it. It has been such a privilege and a joy and an opportunity, and getting to know those of you at Heartbeat International has been part of that. So that is my journey into this role.
Well, I appreciate that. And I love the way that you are, even though it's a condensed version, I love the way that you have connected what you know in your head, connecting that to your spiritual formation and journeying with Jesus into the compassionate and practical help to women in unplanned pregnancies. So at the beginning, I might as well jump into your book, Laura, because you've touched on a couple of the questions that I wanted to ask you. And to be honest, when I first looked at your book, More Than One Choice, How to Love and Support an Unexpected Pregnancy, and Christine will get that into the show notes as well, if that's possible, how to get it. I thought, oh, okay, more than one choice. And it seemed kind of self-evident what the choice was. And then when I started to read your book, and at the very beginning, you say, well, there are four groups of people that this book is written for. Can you just, when you titled it More Than One Choice, what were the choices you were thinking about with regard to those four groups of people, especially?
Yeah, and I think the title might throw people off potentially, but it came from this experience with a patient in my office who I do mention in this book, but she was 18. She came in. I hadn't met her before. She saw the poster for the local pregnancy care center on my wall. And although she was there about a cold, she just started to her story just spilled out of her. And she said that when she was 14, she and her boyfriend got pregnant, and her boyfriend's mother forced her to have an abortion that she didn't want. And she said that she thought about her child every day and wondered what they would be like. And that just, her words really seared into my heart because she said, I felt like I didn't have any other choice. And so that's the way that our culture has shifted in this. It's not that it's assumed that if you have an unexpected pregnancy, or maybe you don't want the pregnancy, that abortion is the natural treatment or care or option. But we really do need to believe that, and everyone will land differently on this spectrum, but if people do believe that women should have a choice, then surely they should have alternatives to abortion available. And that is what the pregnancy help movement provides. We provide a safe place for people to navigate the challenging aspects of their life when they encounter an unexpected pregnancy, but they need to know that there are places where they can receive support and that they do have more than the choice of abortion available to them.
Well said. Well said. You also, to be honest, as I read your book, I was a little convicted at times, and I don't like that feeling, but but thanks anyway. I think that there was a little bit of another choice that you maybe imply for those of us who are pro-life as we approach women in unplanned pregnancies. And so I don't know if I'm being a little obtuse, but maybe can you talk a little bit about what is the choice that we have in our as we approach women in this?
Right. Well, if I'm understanding you correctly, and part of this is because I have lived on both sides. I wasn't saved till I was 41. I would have been clearly, in that pro-choice, what our world would call pro-choice. And so I know what it was like and as a doctor, to not really go beyond a certain layer of all of this, to just think this is a medical decision that the patient can make, and I will, do a reasonable amount of due diligence, and then it's up to them. Mm-hmm. But then when I had the complete change, I realized that there is this sort of space in between the maybe harsh pro-life, don't murder your baby tone, the ones who on the other side who have no understanding that this is a life impacting decision. So it's in that sort of space in between that I suppose is what you're referring to, where can we walk alongside people in the mess of their lives and love them as Jesus has loved us, and understand that we don't control another person's choice, that we are not in charge of their ultimate decision, but we can be responsible for how we engage, how we lean in, how we express a love that can transform. And I think that perhaps is what you're referring to, that it may be that we need to honestly examine, what does it look like to truly walk alongside people at this time, in this age, in this environment where many people have no idea of who Jesus is, or there might just be a harsh no to Christianity. And yet we know that ultimately that's where hope and healing and freedom will be found, regardless of the challenge, not just unexpected pregnancy or prior abortion.
Yeah, I think in your book you refer to it as we're not God's gatekeepers, but we're supposed to be his welcoming committee, which is a lovely way of thinking about it. The hospitality that we demonstrate really to the woman in that, or the family in that valley of decision. And will we, bring them in for that cup of coffee and let's talk about this, versus the green light, red light, you're in, you're not. So I really appreciated that. Let me ask you as well, about, I want to get back to just for a moment. You used a phrase that you had been socialized by the medical system. That could be a kind of a loaded phrase, but I think I got it down right. And I just want to, I'd love to ask you, what do you mean by that? Looking at it, because you've got, as you say, perspective on both sides now.
Yes. So not having another worldview. And I see it, and I saw it in my colleagues who had a Christian worldview, how things were a little different for them. They could withstand the pressures or the nuances in medicine a little differently. And that's very much a generalization. But for me, I engaged full on with the medical route. So it took everything I had to. When I came back from Haiti and only had my medical degree, I didn't even have high school sciences. So I had to go back, get the equivalent of high school sciences, then get into medical school, then do 4 years of medicine, then do 2 years of family residency. So I had to go all in. And so it was like a separate world where there were the unspoken rules, there were the expectations. If I said I wasn't going to do anything, it meant one of my other fatigued colleagues was going to have to pick it up. And so I picked up that perhaps burden, responsibility, the good and the bad. So when I refer to it, I was socialized by the medical world. It's looking back from my now worldview that is a Christian worldview. All I had at that time was, I want to do better. I need to perform better. And I do mention in the book, like just sort of that shaming, you're not quite good enough. And certainly as a family doctor, we were at the lower end of the pecking order. The specialists were more esteemed, but I always wanted to do that type of primary care with patients. So yeah, I just tried to keep working and do everything that I was supposed to and be on the committees. And that's really how I ended up getting to that place of burning out and feeling like either I do less or I can't do this anymore. But it was that point where I realized this is not working for me. And the day when it started, I was about to begin a weekend of call. I'm looking out the window and I just thought, is this all there is to life? I had a good life. I had a good job, a good marriage, 2 little boys. And I just didn't think it wasn't. There was something missing. And that began this journey to fill that. And right at that time, my colleague invited me to go to Guatemala. So I jumped at that chance. Yeah. And then when I did encounter the Lord, I needed to believe in the resurrection of Jesus. I knew that I couldn't engage with Christianity if I didn't believe that. And so something happened where the Holy Spirit helped me bypass my mind to get to my heart. But it didn't mean I didn't still question. I still researched. I read historical accounts. I still looked into it, but something happened. There was that transaction of faith that happened that day. And I thought, this is what I'd always been looking for. I didn't know it was Jesus. It was a bit of a surprise.
Well, I one of the things that I am curious about, and it relates now to your role as the executive director of Pregnancy Care Canada. And actually, for this benefit of our listeners, could you just tell us a brief snapshot about Pregnancy Care Canada, where you are, what you do, all that sort of information?
Yeah, so we are a Christ-centered national best practice association of local pregnancy care centers across Canada. There are 80 affiliated centers, and we also have groups that provide online care as well, online support. And so we help to train and equip and support the staff, the leaders, the volunteers in local pregnancy care centers. And Canada is a big country, a big nation, and the geographic challenges are real. So we're always looking at new ways of trying to raise up help in local communities when maybe it's not even practical to have a local center. And so we're also looking at ways to help engage the church and to increase the digital support that's provided.
Yeah, so you're probably faced with the same questions about the shifting movement or the shifting direction forward for the pregnancy help movement in Canada, like in every other country. Brick and mortar versus digital versus, the bike, the motorbike, the mobile unit, whatever it is. We have joked, Laura and I, for the benefit of our listeners, of having an igloo pregnancy help outpost in Nunavut on someday. So tell me what your biggest surprise was when you became the director of Pregnancy Care Canada.
That's an interesting question. And I'm trying not to, my initial default was a negative thing. So yeah, I think that unfortunately my biggest surprise was I was disappointed in the lack of unity in the pro-life efforts and the lack of maybe grace for different approaches. And I think we can all point a finger at ourselves in some of that. We think we know, we think this is the best way, and we forget that what if God is choosing a different way for other people and other organizations? So that was surprising. And I found it's surprising as well that some of my most challenging encounters with people were people that I thought might have been more helpful and supportive. But I do also believe that God is so faithful and he refines us through these things, and he wants our character to be strengthened and as pure as possible. So there's that negative part. Now, the positive part is, and it wasn't a surprise because I'd always believed this, I loved the stories. I loved meeting the people who were just the sweet and tender representation of Christ's love in these local centers. I loved getting to know them more and really learning new ways that we could serve them. That's our mission field. We want to serve the local centers, the local ambassadors that are helping to provide hope. So that wasn't a surprise, but it was one of the things that I loved and appreciated about my role.
Well, I will just say that I don't know, I think I've known you maybe 7 years, something like that, but I have really seen you harness the positive surprises of the positive aspects, and really have done so much to build Pregnancy Care Canada and build up the local centers. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for your pursuit of unity as well. Tell me a little bit, if you would, about how you, now that you have unlearned some of the socialization from the medical community, what has the response been to your being the executive director? I mean, how I guess I'm asking, how have you found your ability to impact the medical community, your own medical community, in your new role?
Sadly, I would say I feel like it's very minimal. And I thought maybe initially when I started into this, I thought, oh, people couldn't they be open to just maybe in how they speak about this? Or, hey, we didn't learn any of this in medical school. Wouldn't that be helpful to know the other side of the abortion conversation? But there really isn't an openness. And even in Canada, sadly, there's been a bit of a selection against medical students who would openly say they have a pro-life worldview. They might not make it through. So, so I guess my hope to really bring that reformation, I haven't seen the open doors within the medical community. I've seen the value. I did published this little book. It's on the resources on our website, Pregnancy Care Canada, but for primary care physicians in speaking to women with an unexpected pregnancy, like just some questions to ask, because I didn't really have any tools. So I didn't do a good job, but I would have. It wasn't that I was pro-abortion. I just wasn't informed. And so I did put that together. I asked a colleague who provides abortions to look at the booklet, and I wasn't expecting a total endorsement. And they did think that the questions were helpful, but probably they wouldn't ask the fetal, are you aware of the fetal stage of fetal development? They didn't think that was a good question. So I think that there is an openness, but when it starts to feel like it's very black and white and there's a huge separation, there aren't many bridges, and we can all be guilty of adding to that division. So that's my long answer to little influence, perhaps.
The name of the brochure that you're referencing, what is the name of that?
It's called Unexpected Pregnancy: Practical Tools to Help Your Patients Make a Well-Informed Decision. And so it's published by Pregnancy Care Canada. It's a free booklet. And on our website, under the I Want to Help, there's a resources tab, and people can just download the booklet from there.
That sounds like that would be a helpful resource. I hope.
Yeah,
so
hopefully.
That's all right for us to put it in the notes, and hopefully people will download it and give it to their physician. I think Canada stands unique in its current approach to abortion from a legislative viewpoint, and I think there might be people in the listening audience who are not aware. Could you just educate us for a moment on that?
Yeah, we're the only Western democracy without any abortion law. So in 1988, the existing law was struck down, and the legislature was supposed to come up with something else, and nothing else has been introduced. So abortion in Canada is legal up until the baby fully exits the birth canal. And that we are in company, I believe, with North Korea in that, and perhaps one other nation. But that is, an unfortunate, although I still believe that although laws can help constrain a culture, the revelation will change it. So we have had, sadly, there was an incident, I believe it was last year, where there was a woman who aborted a 38-week baby. And most people would find that hard to believe that could happen. But as far as the sources that we're aware of, we believe that actually did happen. And so that's what happens as people get hardened to this. It was her choice. She wanted to do that. But, and then there was a facility that provided that. So we are not, I'm not proud of that in our country, that's where we're at. As in the US, the misinformation and the tolerance to misinformation, maybe that's more disappointing than the actual misinformation. But the slander, the falsehood spoken, most Canadians wouldn't agree with that, but they don't get to hear a lot of the other truth. So we deal with that. And we just have to determine that we're going to keep showing up for the one woman, the one family who really needs help and who is unsure. And I do believe that most Canadians would agree that no woman should feel forced to have an abortion that she doesn't want, or feel like there are no other choices.
I have two last questions. One of them is, how has the lack of, in many countries around the globe, we see centers having their own, I would call them like mini battles with the legislatures or with the national legislatures. and then sometimes sometimes, but not always, it spills over into a battle with either a national or a regional network like your own. So how do you best equip your individual centers for the cultural almost malaise about abortion? I don't know if Canada is in that group of countries that are stridently pro-abortion, but it's definitely in a malaise about protecting life. Let's put it that way. So how do you feel that that Pregnancy Care Canada best equips your individual centers to withstand that cultural as well as the political onslaught, which must happen quite a lot?
Yes, and I think it comes down to, even for on a personal level, it's important to know your why. Why are we doing this? And when our motives are pure as they can be, it's easier to withstand pressure and criticism and attacks because we know why we're doing something. So that would be one of the messages we would want to help the individual centers here. Just remember and know that you're doing something meaningful and needed and legitimate, and know why you're doing this. And because we are a Christian organization, we are not, we're not an activist group. We are a group of compassionate Christ followers who want to bring the love of God into some messy circumstances. So remembering who we are, why we're doing what we're doing, and being strong in that helps to fight the lies and and then knowing together too, right? The three-stranded cord is much stronger. So we link arms, we cheer one another up. When we start feeling weary, let us know and we will pray for you. We'll lift your arms, and together we can fight this battle. We might have one hand rebuilding the wall and the other hand in battle, but together we can do so much more. So I think acknowledging this is the reality of our world. It doesn't mean we accept that. And remembering that, our battle isn't carnal, but spiritual. So make sure you're strong in your own faith journey and knowing why you're doing this work. I think that, and then just sharing the positive stories, because I think people have an interest in hearing those. Lives changed and transformed, and family legacies being built. Those are all enriching for the communities to hear about those things.
Amen. Amen. All right. So my last question is, give me your elevator speech about more than one choice. So you step in and somebody says, you're so-and-so, you're Dr. Laura Lewis. Didn't you just write a book? Tell me what the book is. What's it about?
Yeah, the book is really, I wrote it because it's a lot of the messages that I carry and that I often will speak. And I thought, if I write these down, then they have a different way of being communicated to those who may read the book. And I do feel like many Christians don't really know how to lean into this difficult, challenging, and often very tender area of abortion and unexpected pregnancy. And they're not maybe sure about what they believe. So they get thrown off by the what ifs. What if it's the result of a rape? So it's very important for Christians to know what they believe, and then to understand where they might lose their grace and compassion because of a predetermined judgment, or just it's important that we know how our minds are processing things in our lives. So I wrote it really to help primarily the people in the church to understand that, and also for women and men who've experienced an abortion. And I've seen this so many times, and you probably have as well, that many, even Christian women leaders, they believe that the blood of Jesus, that his work on the cross is sufficient for all things, but maybe not abortion. And there's this hidden part, this shadow of their lives where it's not being healed and redeemed through the love of God, through the power of Christ. And I just have a heart that they would know that that's not true, and that there is hope and healing. So those would be the primary reasons that I wrote this book. And then, I thought perhaps others who maybe don't follow Christ, maybe there's some thread that would help them believe that he is true and real and good. That's a long elevator ride. We must have gone up to
we went up the
70th
Sears
floor,
Tower, but that's okay. That's okay. Probably one of my kids went in and pushed every button for every floor, so it was that's all right. But I want to say that I celebrate and I applaud your multi-directional movement, because not just in the book, but I'm saying just generally for you, you've written that brochure for physicians. What are the kinds of questions you can ask a client or a patient that's sitting in front of you that are tender and compassionate and provide the options, the alternatives. And you've now written the book that, somebody who's not in the pregnancy help movement can read and say, hey, how do you church member, how do you pastor? And I think Pregnancy Care Canada also has is it connecting for pastors, or what's it called?
Healing conversations.
Yeah, thank you. Healing conversations. So, you're addressing the people across the spectrum in what you've said and what you've done as the director of Pregnancy Care Canada to reach into the pulpit, into the physician's office, into the hearts of people who might just be so afraid to have the conversation. So thank you for the conversation that we've had today, Laura. I really appreciate your time. And thank you also for the conversations that you've been willing to have with the physicians, with the residents, with the politicians as well, the media, all across the spectrum. And I just want to thank you for your work. And I think that takes me out, unless you have something else you'd like to share, Laura. I'll give you a 30-second opening.
No, I appreciate the opportunity. And I think it is through having conversations that we can help shift understanding. And so thank you for this.
You're very welcome.
All right. Well, thank you both for being here. It's really encouraging to hear of all of the work that Pregnancy Care Canada is doing. I will link to the book, More Than One Choice. We'll be sure to make it easy access for those of you who are listening to get that in your hands and spread those copies around. I'll also link to that Pregnancy Care Canada booklet that was referenced, in case you would like to download that from the website as well. So with that, I'd ask you to subscribe to the Pregnancy Help Podcast so that you don't miss a future episode. And thanks for listening to this episode of the Pregnancy Help Podcast.